Hello and welcome back to coverage of the second annual Louisville Cube League Cubevitational. This is the third video out of 5 total, with each video covering one draft of the event, so keep that in mind if you're trying to watch the whole event in order. If you haven't checked out the other videos in this series, or you just need a refresher, the full summary of the Cubevitational is available in the first video in this series, linked below. Today we'll be covering the third draft of the tournament, the Synergy Cube Draft. The Synergy Cube was created by Joey and was designed to revolve around a number of mechanics that cross over multiple colors. Many of the cards that are in the cube actually fit into multiple themes rather than just one. This cube was designed to encourage multicolor decks, often 3 colors at least, and as such includes 2 sets of the fetch lands and dual land cycles. You can see a list of the synergies on the screen that are included in the cube, and a link to the full list will be in the description below. As always, please keep in mind that the link will have the latest version of this cube, and it may not be the exact list that we drafted at this event. For a quick reminder on the overall standings of the event coming into the third draft, we have 2 players, Bats and Matt, with 6 wins, Scott with 5 wins, Derek and Joey with 4 wins, Jacob and Bryan with 3 wins, and Prose with 1 win. With all that being said, let's hop right into this cube's matches.
Okay, and we're here now with the Synergy Cube. My name's Joey.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Prose.
And the Synergy Cube is based on about 20 different Synergy archetypes that have vague overlaps. We'll see one match from each player, so you'll get to see a lot of the cube in action. It's also a cube that we overdraft. We do 17 card packs and then burn the last 2 picks. So everyone has a lot of opportunities to get the cards they want. And one thing you're going to notice early on is also that it is a land-heavy cube. There's a ton of fitsing to let people play a bunch of different strategies. We can see here, looks like, hard to tell what Bats is on right away, but Matt is playing a tempo kind of deck with a lot of interaction. You saw Lightning Strike for the first creature. Anything like that Clarion Spirit that gets out of hand on Bats' side is hard for Matt to deal with because he has a ton of 1/1 removal.
Yeah, and looking at Bats' deck list, he's artifact focused, but also has a good amount of 1/1 removal in his own right, and he's just looking to build out his board with as much synergy as he possibly can.
Remind me the name of that card that Bats just played.
Niamba. And looks like it was a removal spell to kill the Glintnest Crane in response to the bounce. I'm a little surprised on Bats' end that he wanted to attack for 1 with the Crane instead of block and bounce it. I guess he was fine trading Niamba for the Woe Strider, though Matt would have been on 5 mana, enough to possibly escape it back out. I forget how many cards you have to exile, but he was already at 4 cards in graveyard, it looks like.
I believe Woe Strider's 5.
Okay, so it wouldn't have been exactly there, but...
Yeah.
Oh no, it is 4, actually.
Bats is really struggling to put a board together. Matt's removal is just picking off anything that Bats is trying to do, and he's not putting forth the most impressive clock, but with an opponent who's not really pressuring the board at all, it seems like it's enough so far.
Right. I mean, Malcator threatens to be quite an issue, as Blade Splicer already made an extra... Oh, but Malcator gonna go away. Interesting to see that one go away instead of the Blade Splicer. I guess the first strike ability on Blade Splicer enough.
Yeah, against the Woe Strider, I can see it.
And it looks like that was a Drown in Filth from Matt. Again, talked about how many cards he had in graveyard earlier, so I guess that was big enough to take out the token. Talking about the interactive game plan, like you see Matt's sacrificing the goat here for a Scry because he's kind of out of gas. Trading 1/1 with a couple of tokens does mean he's behind on cards now. And threatening to take out that battle, so now he gets Woe Strider in the graveyard ready to bring it back next turn. But Bats' value kind of gives him the serve back here, even though he's at a lower life total.
This is the battle that transforms into the... Okay, at the beginning of your end step, if put a +1/+1 counter on it if a permanent was put into a graveyard. Alright. Couldn't remember what the backside was there. Really wanted to get that flipped over.
Feels like Bats has to have something to use his mana on with all those cards in his hand.
I can see a couple things over there that both seem like really good options right here.
It's interesting. Matt is looking at Woe Strider and Battle for Azgul. It looks like possibly at one point was looking at a sacrifice engine, though, as mentioned earlier, he's much more of a spells engine. But Solitude, again, powerful card advantage card, getting rid of the Woe Strider for good and gaining a bit of life back for Bats.
Following up with Justice Steel Overseer is a bit anemic, but he has had his board ripped apart turn after turn, so he's just trying to get anything going that he possibly can here.
Yeah, it would have been a great turn for Matt to draw a removal spell for Solitude that could have also pumped the Sprite Dragon and threatened the flip on that battle, but as it stands, Dragon is still just a 1/1, waiting for a bit of interaction. Gets flipped, but maybe too late now as Bats is starting to build up a board. I assume this has to go with Steel Overseer, but it doesn't matter. Spell Queller gets in there anyway. Feels like maybe a turn late on that Terminate draw. Solitude gaining life also makes it seem like Matt can afford to kind of just shove, throwing in everything besides the Steel Overseer here. If he had still been at, I think it was 9, then it would be a little bit riskier to do so. Oof.
Oh man, Reflector Mage after all the damage he sent at that battle.
Yes, now, I will admit I'm not confident I understand how those interact, but looks like we have an attack here for 9, so Matt's going to scoop it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like any permanent that flips, I believe. It bounces right back to your hand. As always is the front side, though.
Right, I just don't know if that means it's uncastable because of Reflector Mage, or if it is castable. I believe it would be castable, but...
Yeah, I think Reflector Mage specifies the name.
Either way, didn't end up seeing it come up that time. Just getting the blocker out of the way was good enough.
And I think that game really showcased kind of what this cube is about, because Matt fired off a bunch of really solid cards and just took apart Bats' early board, but eventually Bats put together enough synergy pieces and overwhelmed Matt's remaining pretty small board on his own right. But
ooh, this is a huge swing early, though. Getting the Priest of the Forgotten Gods going early is such a huge play. It looks like maybe some 0 mana interaction. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you want to let that Iconoclast stick around with that priest on the board.
True, like they were a huge threat together, but the priest is still, again, talking about how Matt's kind of set up for some element of a sacrifice deck. The priest is a very powerful card.
Speaking of very powerful cards.
Yeah, and this would have made letting the Iconoclast hang around a nightmare.
Even worse, yeah.
all of those tap. So Matt does, of note, have potentially 4 mana up here between Urza and the Priest. So he could possibly have some interaction, even though it looks like he's tapped out. But doesn't look like it.
Urza looks like he's playing for the wrong team here.
Yeah, Bats' deck definitely would have loved an Urza, though of note, it looks like he maybe wasn't as focused on his mana being just 2 colors on his side of the board, as we've seen a ton of dual lands from Matt to make his deck work less here. So the Priest getting activated just eats Blade Splicer. Let's see if the extra mana this turn does anything for him.
Yeah, so we've got 4 mana floating right now, so we've got a pretty big spell here, presumably. Oh, we're just spinning? Yawgmoth, a solid hit there. Another card that would be absolutely horrifying were the Iconoclast still in play.
Yeah, I think the Iconoclast being the best thing we've seen so far that kind of bridges that gap between the spells deck and sacrifice deck that we're going for here. Though there's the Lightning Axe that I think we saw Asmo as well last game. I think that was the card that got scryed to the bottom. So lots of different things going on here.
Yeah, do you want to speak to the design of the cube being um so able to overlap all these different synergies? I mean, Matt's deck
Right.
really showcases like 4 or 5 kind of strategies all at once.
Right. Matt's deck does a good job of showing how there are a lot of them that have an overlap. I mean, having the brothers in play here together, definitely not a common sight, but. Or not brothers, right? I got confused. Because they came out together, I was thinking of them as brothers.
Yawgmoth, not the brother. Mishra was the brother.
Right. I'll forget what a lot of cards do, but I can't make a lore slip like that, or else I'll be my head.
That's pretty unacceptable, yeah.
And possibly, I don't know what's in Bats' hand, but we see him here on only 1 blue. Not sure exactly what he's got here. We see here a sacrifice to Yawgmoth in response to that sword, so Matt's going to get to draw a card instead of just nothing off of that removal spell. Game 1, it was Bats kind of dodging around 1-for-1 removal, but if Yawgmoth gets to stay in play, no 1-for-1 removal is going to work on the other side. And here's 2 creatures that really want that last card to be an instant or sorcery.
And it is.
Sure enough, it is, yeah.
So this is just the duress mode, but getting the elemental threatens to do some work with Yawgmoth. Not sure if Yawgmoth can really afford to get in here. I guess being able to sacrifice the other creatures makes it.
Well, Nettlesis is only a 2/2.
And it threatens to go down to a 1/1 if he throws the elemental at the scrap trawler.
Right.
And is there any incentive for him not to kill the scrap trawler? I don't see anything.
No, and yeah, there it is. I was going to say, we know that this is going to turn on the affinity for the thought monitor, so it's not too surprising that he kills it there.
Interesting. I think he's taking. It looks like he's maybe taking this opportunity to kill the germ before.
I think he was trying to kill the sash. Maybe? Not really sure what this mana is tapped for.
Right. I thought maybe this was kill the germ in response to the sash, but you're right. It does look like possibly. I don't know.
Oh, the mana was tapped because Scrap Trawler returns it to your hand. It doesn't put it in play. So
Right.
he had to play the sash, and now we're munching on some stuff.
Right. I'm just confused as to why Matt sacrificed 2 creatures. I thought Scratch Roller was a 3/2. Am I wrong on that?
It was already shrunk once.
Right. So he should have only had to sacrifice the elemental.
Yeah, not sure.
Just missed why the Sprite Dragon had to go away, but sure, there's something I'm just not considering. Maybe it did get canceled out with a Lion Sash plus. Oof. So a cantrip into a removal spell means Young Pyromancers making another guy can trade it in to draw a card, killing the germ. Now we're getting in for 4 and got a full hand thanks to Yawgmoth. So definitely looks like it's going to be hard for Matt to lose this game at this point. Woestrider giving us more creatures to sacrifice, kind of ad infinitum, since Woestrider can come back many times with how stacked our graveyard is. Yes, I'm pretty sure this is lethal here.
Yeah.
6 cost Thought Monitor was definitely not what Bats had in mind when he drew up his deck.
I think that's what many people have in mind ever when you put Thought Monitor in your deck.
All right, let's see if Bats can come out early and strong for once. I love the artifact strategies. When they work, they look so impressive.
Right, and we saw the pieces to just kind of value Matt out game 1. I'm interested in that Steam Vents. I was kind of talking down on Bats' lands last game. Have we seen what the red splash is for yet? I don't think so. But
We have
Don't
not
believe so, no.
so maybe we'll get to see something this game. There's Scalding Tarn. Okay, so maybe just hadn't drawn it the other games, but definitely seems like something worth a red splash. Let's see if we can. Oh, we also did see Plateau.
We did see
last
Plateau,
game.
yeah.
Curious. Always a chance it's just a couple removal spells like Lightning Bolt or something like that, but could be some stuff for the artifact strategy. The artifact strategy is predominantly in Jeskai.
Ooh, are we escalating? I think we're thinking about it.
Especially if we have that Asmo that I'm pretty sure Matt has. If we have it in hand, then this lets us also cast Asmo this turn.
Yep. Do you want to try to pronounce the whole name of the card for us?
I do not.
All right. Fair play.
Asmo will make blocking the attackers on the battle difficult down the road.
Scriptrawler's been doing some heavy lifting this match. Not to much effect, but
Right, we see Bats play back to back, just artifact impulse creatures as Crane and Ingenious Smith come down, trying to load up for later turns.
Iconoclast and Cookbook. Good place to be when you're the one with Asmo.
Mm-hmm. Don't know if Matt has anything he wants to discard, but if Bats presents a truly difficult creature, then could always discard end of turn, discard on his turn to get the 2 food needed.
Yeah, discarded a land there.
I would love to see Urza or something to turn these food into also
Yeah, look
okay.
at that.
To just predict more cards for Matt. I'm not able to see them as he draws them. He draws them pretty close, but definitely been drawing pretty hot this game. Looks like this is a evoked solitude in response to the Urza trigger. Probably exiling the Urza, if I had to guess, but Asmo is also a real issue, as is the Iconoclast.
Yeah, 3 really good targets here. We're still 2, 3, 4, 5. We're still at least 2 turns off of the Sphinx.
Right.
Takes out the Urza.
I think at least one of those comes into play triggers missed. I think the Crane or the Ingenious Smith.
No, they both hit. The Crane hit the Scrap Trawler and
Was
the
it?
Smith
Okay.
hit the Sphinx. Yeah.
It was hard to keep track of since some of the hand was already revealed from
Breya's
the
Apprentice.
brutality. That's 2 more artifacts towards that count, so getting up there. Sphinx, as you mentioned, still a little far away, but
Well, Sphinx is castable now, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
right, next turn.
Next turn, yeah. Also the long-awaited red splash.
True. I doubt it could be for just that. Apprentice is nice to have here, but probably not worth the splash for. This attack currently for 3, though could be 4 off of Cookbook activation, plus more for any instance. So it feels like
It's currently 4, right?
block.
Because of the soldier. Soldier food.
Correct.
Cookbook. Yeah.
Yes.
But the battle's at 1, so.
Yeah, big thing was just that it's very difficult to block with Matt's ability to make artifacts in 2 different ways at instant speed. Here we see Terminate, bringing with it another soldier, putting Lion Sash back.
I assume we're shortcutting to making the Lion Sash deal damage to itself here.
The Lion Sash is supposed to be in hand, right? Off of the Scrap Trawler? Might have been a mistake there.
Couple of big old artifact creatures staring each other down now. That Ingenious Smith is doing what I've seen every Ingenious Smith do, which is just chill and get gigantic.
Right, but Crane's the one who's able to get in. I'll always be the advocate of Crane. I love that card, but Smith definitely threatening to be a bigger impact on this game than the chipping in for 1.
Yeah, in the face of the ability to make a food every turn, I'm not sure that the chipping in for 1 is going to get us there, but I'm no mathematician, but
True. The food hurts more in a deck like this, though, where it's clear discard is not the main strategy. He doesn't have a ton of cards that are taking advantage of it.
oh, Ephemerate here.
Turning Crane into finding a Nettle Cyst.
Nettle Cyst certainly makes Crane better. Currently,
We're
1,
ever
2,
closer to that Sphinx as well.
3, 4, 5, 4.
Feels like Matt has maybe run out of gas a little bit.
Well, the difficult thing is, I think if he has any interaction, he wants to save it for the Ephemerate flashback. Yeah. So, kind of has to not do much on his turn. But
Yeah, but he has 0 cards now, right?
correct,
cards in
having to
hand.
discard the card for the Lightning Axe
And Bats is cooking. I mean, we got to the Sphinx. Now we have a significant flying army that Matt cannot currently interact with in any way, really.
True, and here I like getting in with the germ here, even though it can be blocked and traded with. You're planning to move the Nettle Cyst onto a flyer next turn anyway, so I think even if the germ ends up trading off with something, that's still a good trade for bats.
Absolutely.
Five. So we've got a 5/5 germ, a 7 power ingenious myth, right? That thing's one base.
Yeah.
Big old block there. I like blocking the smith instead of the germ actually, for the reason that you just talked about, which is that Nettlesys is probably moving next turn anyways.
Right. Shambling suit trading off as, again, the ground forces, not the thing that Bats really cares about. It's not like game one where he was behind and needed to be a little bit careful of his life total. His life total's been kept fairly high this game, and Germ didn't get traded with, so no need to move it onto a flyer. Perfectly fine to have it get chump blocked. Just deal, looks like
4, 5,
5.
6, 7 damage, right?
Oh, maybe I got the Sphinx confused with Thought Monitor. Forgot how big the Sphinx actually was. But yeah, Bats game 1 and 3 just valuing out. It felt like, as Matt, once he went empty-handed, just didn't have anything more to do. And after that, Matt managed to rally back 2 of the remaining 3 matches to end up 2-2 by the end of that draft. And Scott, how did Bats turn out?
Yeah, he actually only dropped one match and ended up winning the other 3, so ended at 3-1.
Okay. Well, we'll move right along into our next match here. Back for match 2 here, we have Derek and Scott. Derek was on a mostly blue-red, kind of splashing white spells deck. You can see probably why Matt got pushed off of that theme if it had been one of his more main themes. Scott, do you want to speak to what you ended up on here?
Yeah, I'm a very low to the ground black, red, green sacrifice based deck, and I felt incredibly good about this draft. I got every card I wanted for this archetype. This was actually the first match I played with this deck, even though it's the second match we're showing you. And I was feeling like a 4-0 was definitely in my future. That's how strongly I felt about this deck.
Interesting. So even though as we saw, Matt wound up with a couple of the pieces, you don't feel like you were missing anything too much from the few pieces he had taken away.
Yeah, as we were drafting the packs, there was lots of sacrifice pieces, so I was able to wheel like lots of pieces. Ended up having to make like pretty tough cuts because I had so many playables. Overall, I just felt like my deck was extremely strong.
Out of the
But
gates blazing in this game.
yeah,
True. The attack on both turns with Voltaic Visionary, a show of strength to not try to get the extra card off of that. Meanwhile, Scott, looks like you've stalled on a one lander, though have an extra land this turn.
yeah, I got a little tricked because Derek was lamenting how awful his deck was, and I thought my deck was so good. I kept a pretty greedy hand, and you can see it. It's not working out. I'm missing a
Right.
color. I just now found my second land drop.
Carrion Feeder, Witch's Oven, Lightning Bolt, definitely some spells that make one land look appealing. Here we see Derek choosing to read a card that's been in play for 3 turns now. So that was an attack for 3 off of prowess. So a little bit of life total pressure, but having the food if you need it. Did you have anything to take advantage of the food, either just as a token, as an artifact, or anything, or is it just mainly the witch's oven for the sacrifice?
The Witch's Oven is the big part of it. I do have cards that trigger when I sacrifice permanents. I don't think I had any ways to like sack them for free, but you find yourself in board states where you just need to pay 2 mana and gain 3 life, and getting a little bit of extra value when you do that.
True. Some of the sacrifice effects, like Mayhem Devil or Ravenous Squirrel, caring about artifacts as well.
Both of which are in my deck.
That's Jury, Master of the Review, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and Jury threatening to get quite large as you can sacrifice the skeletons and reassemble it every turn thanks to the Witch's Oven.
Still missing my third color. And he just refueled with Bedlam Reveler, so I'm not completely out of this game because I have so many cards I can play still, but I'm quickly getting buried here.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the prowess trigger, meaning that this Jury can't kill Abbott, or no, I guess if you sacrifice the skeletons first, then Jury will be 2 power and able to kill it. Looks like that's not the route we go with, though. Maybe threatening the block, keep Abbott back home, take less damage.
Yeah, I think that was actually just a mistake.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're sitting on 2 lands. It's not like you're going to have time to regrow your skeleton anytime, presumably. So
Yeah, but what I ended up doing means he just doesn't attack, and I don't do anything that turn.
True. I mean, if he isn't able to trigger prowess, or thanks to discard, even if he does trigger prowess but doesn't affect your creatures, you still have the option to trade with the reassembling skeletons for the Abbot. I agree, I would have sacrificed it, but I think that I understand the thought process of just wanting to trade it.
it's a decimating bolt,
I believe so. So threatening
obliterating bolt. Excuse me.
Obliterating bolt.
Wrong adjective.
So again, going to deal 1 damage to the Abbot, but not enough to kill it thanks to the prowess trigger. And looks like Jilt here as the follow-up.
It's just lethal now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So you can see here, Derek looks like he has not splashed much of any other synergies into his deck. Pretty straight on spells, and Scott pretty straight on sacrifice. No need for any extra pieces since it looks like you guys got most of what you would want. Though we did see some of the lands that supported Derek's splash into white. We might get to see this game a little bit more about what that's trying to support.
Derek with his trademark fast as lightning play and blatant zone abuse.
I'm sure by the time another permanent comes into play, that volcanic island will find its way back.
I don't know. I don't know if you should be sure about that.
Ooh, Goblin Bombardment. Definitely threatening to do more than the Oven was doing last game. Here,
Yeah.
all 3 colors online. Mentioned how you had been stuck off of green last game.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to show off some of my synergies in this game and the next one.
Interesting. So, did you have a lot of things to make tokens to trigger with this squirrel, or?
Not a ton. This card underperformed. I was definitely higher on it, but in the actual games, it didn't do a ton.
Right. I think last game, the only card we saw for it was Witch's Oven, so maybe not a ton to combine with it. Meanwhile, Derek just making some treasure, setting up. Patron of the Arts, definitely an annoying card to have to move past with your current board state, though it looks like that's a Mayhem Devil in hand. Oh, but not an extra black man. It looks like you also had Carrion Feeder, but not able to deploy both that turn. And here we have Rip Apart. All three reasonable targets.
Yeah, for sure.
Derek. Chooses to go after the bombardment.
Yeah, I mean, taking the only reliable sack outlet at this point kind of neuters the Mayhem Devil, and Cheddarfang isn't doing anything, so.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think Mayhem Devil looks like one of the scarier cards, but definitely if he's cutting you off of your only way to sacrifice. But we know that there's a Carrion Feeder that can follow up next turn. Stormwing entity adding to the list of prowess creatures Derek has access to, threatening to get the clock going pretty quick. Blood Artist, Carrion Feeder, so kind of the whole engine here, but no extra dudes that we'd love to sacrifice yet. Would love to draw that reassembling skeleton from last game.
Interested to see where this journey gets targeted.
Yeah, I assume it would have to go after the Mayhem Devil, but removal always a little awkward against the sacrifice deck as it's able to get value off of just the sacrifice in response.
Appears to go after Carrion Feeder, actually.
Okay.
Again,
Afraid
I guess
of that one getting too big.
I guess
It's
just
in
taking
line
the
with
sack
his-
outlet off the board.
Yeah, it's in line with his previous Rip Apart play.
Okay, so we see Patron of the Arts dies, giving us another treasure. We see Momentary Blink, part of the White Splash, though Derek did tap one of his white sources already for that Rip Apart, so it would have to be his treasure to cast this Blink. It doesn't
He just has the one white source at the moment, so.
Yeah. Doesn't look like he would have enough instants or sorceries for that Bedlam Reveler, though he's threatening to do a full restock with Bedlam Reveler again next turn, similar to last game, depending on what he draws.
Man, I would have been really tempted to momentary blink the entity there to block the Mayhem Devil. Although I guess that leaves you with no board, but
With the his red thing with the Bedlam Reveler in hand, to refill that's a play he maybe should have considered a little bit, yeah.
Right. Maybe he's thinking that Bedlam Reveler is so expensive at this point that any spell he draws, he wants to be able to cast before the Reveler. And if he draws more lands, maybe not wanting to trade away the entity plus half of the Momentary Blink.
So I draw a fetch land, which allows me to show off my splash card here, which admittedly was pretty greedy. But that card is such a powerful effect in a deck like mine. I felt like it was worth the risk here.
it's gonna do some work with Chatterfang.
Yeah, if Carrion Feeder had still been in play, this would, I think, just be lethal. Here, gonna kill Cheddarfang in response. I actually think this is the moment where I would have fired off Momentary Blink to blink before a Braid to get the triggers, the Prowess trigger to make it a 4/4 this turn on blocks.
Did the first damage go on to the Stormwing entity? I assume it did. But maybe
Oh, I don't know.
not. No.
Hard to put the damage on the Stormwing when
Yeah, I guess there's
Scott
no
had
reason
no
for
way
it
to
to
do the other damage. But ooh, Stagger Shock, an interesting one to leave on top. A little bit awkward with the Bedlam Reveler, though. I don't think he has enough to be able to cast both. But content just to do this. So he's going to go really low off of this. And okay, so just this line means he's just planning to flashback Momentary Blink, just trying to get in for 4 damage here.
Doesn't have mana to do that.
Yeah,
He has the treasure.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So if he does this, hits for 4, I guess Scott probably blocks. Because 4 puts you to 6, flashback Stagger Shock. So if for some reason you were unable to block with Spirits this turn and next turn, it would be lethal, but
This card in hand must be really, or we know it, right? Is it still Bedlam Reveler?
it's still Bedlam Reveler. It's just awkward to try to plan out how next turn's gonna go with Stagger Shock coming back. Also not wanting to have to use Momentary Blink from the graveyard, wanting to leave that there for Bedlam Reveler discount also makes it seem reasonable to not block, though in this scenario it means it was wrong to cast Stagger Shock on his turn, maybe just got a bit too excited to cast it, because the Prowess trigger would have been great to make that Stormwing a 4/4 on defense. So here, Derek at 3, deploying this Reveler. So if he doesn't have an answer to the Spirit in the top 3, then he's just dead. But Jilt, an excellent answer if he has enough mana to do both sides of it.
He just needs to do one side of it, right, to live?
He just needs to do one side to live, but if he can... Oh?
Okay.
That
Decided.
was confusing.
Yeah, decided that living wasn't good enough for him, I guess.
Maybe something we missed there. Maybe
It's certainly possible the life totals were wrong there, yeah.
Right. A game with Mayhem Devil and Blood Artist, for sure, could have missed a point of damage there on our updated life totals. So it looks like, Scott, you were on a mulligan this game?
Yeah.
Decided not to keep a one-lander this time?
A little bit more discipline. Not a lot, mind you, but a little bit.
Derek's mana looking great with Catchier Triome into a Plains in hand, means he has access to all of his colors. Here, Clifftop Retreat, so not going to be any mana trouble on Derek's side this game. Or Scott's, as both players fully developed in terms of colors of mana. And Stormwing, we saw how much damage this was able to deal last game, even though it wasn't able to close it out because of Lingering Souls. It's still quite a scary card to see this early.
Yeah, my deck is removal light here. I opted for just maximizing my synergies, and that didn't leave a lot of room left.
Right, it is a little awkward, even though there's a ton of removal in this cube. If you're not actively taking your strategy cards, then other people maybe think it's open and move in, even on a partial basis. But here, getting attacked for 4. No board. Patron of the Arts, very good attacker. Looks like a couple of lands in hand. Would be surprised not to see at least one land go away.
Bloodghast, a solid discard here, yeah.
Yeah, Bloodghast. We have a fetch land in hand, so if we have any way to get value off sacrificing Bloodghast, we could go quite large this turn just on that alone, but it doesn't look like we do. We just have a couple more lands. Couple of plays. Jury, the first one to get played here. Oh, Jury triggering off of the fetch land. I was curious why not saving the fetch land for later, but it makes sense to get the extra counter onto Jury. Of note, we were talking about tokens last game. The Goblin got dealt with, but the Goblin Shaman making a treasure is another way to make a token that also sacrifices itself, so lots of value there. I often cite Fable of the Mirror Breaker as it's a powerful card in all formats it's legal in, but in this cube, it interacts with most of the synergies, making treasures, discarding cards, making tokens. Jury goes down here, is able to take out Patron of the Arts, trigger Blood Artist. So the race isn't too bad, but Stormwing Entity still kind of setting a timeline. We're seeing the Exile off of Nahiri's... What's the name of that card?
Nahiri's Warcrafting. Yeah, so it does 5 damage, the 3 overflow. You look at the top 3 cards of your library and exile one of them? Yeah, one of them. But can only play it this turn. That is unfortunate mana for that clause.
Right. Unfortunately, exiling a red card with it would have meant needing 3 red mana this turn. Not able to find that. Would have been nice to deal with the Blood Artist, too.
Or this
Fable.
reflection of Kiki Jiki, which is potentially very dangerous.
Well, that was before the Fable flipped, right?
Oh, right, he had to play that turn. Yeah.
Right, but the Fable making copies of Blood Artist for when you sacrifice a creature to this aspirant is going to be a lot of damage coming in very quickly. As the actual
Bedlam Reveler,
one...
strong start here.
Yeah, we saw Bedlam Reveler kind of be a weakness in game 2, whereas Derek does sometimes have trouble filling up his graveyard, but a fantastic card to find here.
It's worth noting, too, with the reflection that those copies are sacrificed as well, so...
True.
For cards like Mayhem Devil, it...
Momentary Blink. Interesting card to see here. Assume we'll see an attack with both, since Momentary Blink kind of gives us carte blanche. No, just the Stormwing. Wanting...
so we're attacking and then blinking for prowess.
Yep, just getting that 1 extra damage in off of the entity.
All right, our last Reveler was 3 lands. Is this one better?
And I guess if we find something like Lightning Strike here, we could... Another prowess trigger. I don't know if it's enough for that staggering shock. It looks like Stormwing should be 5 power here. So 1 more trigger would get us up to 6 power. So staggering shock 1 short of lethal, it looks like. Though, of note, obviously, Blood Artist threatens to gain Scott some life at instant speed here.
Yeah, but I'm definitely feeling the pressure here. I'm extremely low on life, and again, not having a lot of removal in my deck means that flyer is looking more and more dangerous.
I think this maybe is a mistake. I would be more interested in sacrificing the reassembling skeletons and buying it back just to get one extra Blood Arch trigger out of all this. Oh, but it counters Stagger Shock, so it doesn't rebound.
I'm pretty sure that was on end step, not during combat.
Right,
yeah.
but just sacrificing the skeletons and bringing it back ends up with the same board on Scott's side,
Sure.
but one extra Blood Arch trigger, though the countering of Stagger Shock obviously makes Scott's line worth it. Looks like one land in hand and something else. Can't quite see what the other card is.
Abrupt Decay, maybe? No. Stick Fingers.
Stick Fingers, a part of the self-mill strategy, though interacts favorably with a lot of the creatures we want in this sacrifice deck.
Not entirely sure what it can find for us here, so we get to find 2 creature cards into our graveyard.
Right. Not sure. We see reassembling skeletons and Bloodghast already in play, the 2 cards that are probably best for us to hit off of that in most cases. It seems likely that we're just going to die to Stormwing Entity again here. So, free attack, Derek doesn't take the damage, opts to block, but Bloodghast comes back thanks to Overgrown Tomb, so Scott's out of cards. So if Derek has 2 ways to trigger Prowess, Stormwing Entity is just lethal. Oh, and Jilt should be able to do it, right? Oh, right, because Jilt can't deal damage to players. Oh, but yeah, seems like there shouldn't be any way. Oh, but just misses the momentary blink.
One more draw step here?
Well, that's not going to
Scalding
do
Tarn
it.
does not feel like it does it, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Other land.
Big prowess creatures, even though we saw Derek fail to draw enough non-creature spells game 2, we did see him manage to pull it together in the first and third game, and Derek overall ended up going 2-2 in that draft, only managing to win one of the other 3 matches that he played.
Yeah, and again, he expressed a lot of disdain for his deck, and I thought my deck was incredibly strong. So ending up also at 2-2 was quite the disappointment. This was not my favorite draft of the event for sure.
Well, the draft went fine, just the matches, right?
Yeah.
So back for Prose and Bryan's match. Bryan was on a mostly red-black exile theme deck, using cards that take advantage of cards being cast from exile, and a lot of cards that allow you to cast cards from exile.
Yeah, I was playing the +1/+1 counters deck. I think I got almost everything that I wanted in this draft. I was really excited about this deck. I don't remember which round this match actually was, but I was very excited about this deck. And then my Birds of Paradise immediately got killed, as it does. So
Right, I think that was Seal of Fire, most likely, or Firebolt. No, that was Firebolt.
yeah.
So we see the Ozolith or one of the Ozolith cards here.
That one's the Shattered Spire, which is the one that
Puts extra counters on
counters.
things.
Yep.
Yes. Were you playing mostly +1/+1 counters, or is that kind of a splashed synergy for you here?
No, that was the core of the deck, was +1/+1 counters.
Okay. We'll see if we can get any creatures to show that off. So good fortune unicorn,
Fortune Unicorn, yeah.
threatening to make all future creatures quite large. Combination with Ozolith.
Yeah, the Ozolith is a card that I was not sure about when I picked it, but throughout the draft, was very happy with it.
Right. A hardened scales that can kind of do all the work itself, thanks to its activated ability. The 1 extra mana, definitely worthwhile for it. So, at Sushi, one of the cards in the cube that's just very, very powerful in its own right, but overlaps with the treasure sub-theme that Bryan seems to have going here as well. You can see I believe that's Shambling Ghast is the name of that card in play, so threatening to make some treasures in a couple of different ways. The card that overlaps the two strategies being Prosper Tomebound. We'll see if we get to see that from Bryan this match. So if Bryan has any interaction, this could be nice, but just losing Sashi, pretty dangerous. Immediately grabbing for the treasures as well, so...
That's got to be scary. He's got 4 untapped lands, and he's like, I want these treasures immediately.
Okay, so able to use Pyrite Spellbomb to finish off the Angel. Only one card left in hand. And Grim Hireling.
That's the make extra tokens when your creatures deal damage, alright.
Yes, and sacrifices treasure, so it makes sense why he would have reached for it so early. Though it's going to be difficult to use it to kill anything since he had to use some of the treasures to cast it, and all your creatures are getting so large because of Ozolith. So it looks like a probably already insurmountable board that it's managing to put together here. As we see, just in that turn alone, Noble Hierarch now is a 4/5, same turn it was cast.
Yeah, as I watched Prose play this deck, I was very impressed with how quickly his boards grew to like absurd, out of control sizes.
Right, it seems to be the difference between the two different Ozoliths, as this one allows you to go pretty wide with a bunch of big creatures, whereas the other Ozolith really rewards you for focusing on just one big creature. So
Shambling Geist went for a trip and then came back. Ghoul? Shambling Ghoul.
yes, I misspoke earlier, but managed to get that attack seems to be just about getting the treasures off of Hireling, though Hireling could use those treasures to possibly interact here, though again the creatures are just too large.
Yeah, I think he was one short with the Hierarch being a 6/6.
Yeah, if the ghoul had been the one that got blocked, giving an extra treasure, that would have made the difference. Is this Bright Palm?
This is Bright Palm, yes. So
again,
deciding who to back up here.
Yes. We haven't seen much of +1/+1 counters out of any of the other decks we've seen so far, and it looks like it's because Prose wound up with all of it and definitely running away with this first game very quickly.
Yeah, so using Bright Palm's ability to just double the counters on this thing should be +1, I believe.
So backing it up and then making it difficult to block and doubling again. So yeah.
Yes, I forgot about the second half of Bright Palms. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Okay. So yeah, the creature in play couldn't even block.
Right. There was just an attack for 12 there, it looked like. 2 counters from the Unicorn when it came to play, 2 counters from Bright Palm, doubling the number of things to Bright Palm's ability that got backed up onto it, and then, which actually I believe should have been one more.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you were saying, because doubling from 4 to 8 +1 from Ozolith. But either way, into game 2 now. Gala Greeters. Very versatile card in what it does, but I assume in your deck it's just about itself getting big.
Yeah, I think generally that was it. I think there were a couple times that the treasure mode helped out a little bit, but
Right, it looks like your mana base is pretty good, but
a lot of times that just happens. It just dies immediately because people don't like being greeted, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the other Ozolith, or Ozolith tribal.
Oh, of note, one thing I should mention as we're going through all these matches, it was all one draft of the same cube. Some of the lands are doubled. This is the second time we've seen Taiga. There's 2 of each of the original duels, and there's 2 of each fetch land in this cube. So that is why we have seen some of the dual lands multiple times. Like I mentioned earlier, the mana base for this cube is a lot to support people doing their many colored strategies. Was that Savai Triome mostly a red-white land for you, or do you have a bit of a black splash that we have yet to see?
It was just a red-white land. It also made the Verdant Catacombs a little bit better.
Ah, okay. If your other Triome was already in play, I suppose.
I don't see any black spells.
Okay, so Pia plus Prosper, definitely threatening to go pretty wide on this board.
Yeah, this was a bit of an avalanche from Bryan's side here.
Right, Facebreaker plus Prosper. There were like all those cards interact pretty favorably with one another. As here we see
Sushi showing back up.
Now we should see a card exiled with Prosper, right?
I believe we should have there, yeah.
But yeah, there we go. Important to start getting those Thopters off of Pia to be able to get those set up.
Double Ozolith here. Not a lot of synergy with each other all the time, but bringing in Jolene, who is probably a card that Bryan would have liked to have, but
yeah, it looks like his mana base wouldn't have been able to support it, as we see him with only basics in play right now. So the green splash probably would have been asking a lot of him, but I would not be surprised if we're seeing one of the only cards he's splashing white for in Pia, as getting the Thopter here is a very good setup for him. I know that he has at least one other white card that we've yet to see, but I think it's mostly just for Pia being able to generate those Thopters. Bryan doing some math and telling you to do the math, and
Yeah, I did the math.
I think rightly refusing.
Yeah, there's not really anything that's gonna dig me out of the hole with all those flying creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the math wasn't there that turn, that game wasn't going anywhere from that spot.
Right, the extra card off of Prosper being turned into an extra card plus a Thopter, thanks to Pia, is just so much. And then the treasure that it becomes turning into another card off of Professional Facebreaker, kind of just creating this loop until Bryan runs out of mana every turn.
I also think the counters deck has a really hard time coming back from being behind on the board. And you could certainly make large creatures, but if your opponent's threats have evasion like Bryan's did, it doesn't matter how big your guys are, you know?
Yep, absolutely. There is definitely removal that can account for that, but kind of opted not to bring much of that in order to just keep the core of the deck churning. Botanical Brawler here. One of the more fun cards, I think, throughout the day with this deck.
Yeah, a newer card to be printed, and definitely feels like you have the correct Ozolith to line up with it, though I suppose actually either one is great. But in case you need to be able to trade it off early through Bryan's aggression, even though it looks like Bryan's mostly set up for the long game, but getting to put those two counters onto the Ozolith to hang around for later, definitely
Yeah,
nice.
that Ozolith definitely makes those exchanges feel a little less bad, but I would have preferred
Right.
to keep the Botanical Brawler.
I've mentioned before how there is a lot of removal and interaction in this cube, so any card to let you kind of still get value, like the Ozolith, definitely threatening to invalidate somewhat the removal coming in on the other side. So Pollen Bright Druid threatening to go up to a 4/4 here. And should just halt the aggression. Ooh, and Blizzard Brawl. Of note, all of our basics here are snow basics. Not that we usually see people have that many basics in play, but threatening to pick off. I forget the name of that card, but our card
Magmatic
advantage.
Channeler.
Yes. That was
Didn't
threatening to
actually
just start exiling.
didn't actually have the snow portion of that activated there, but didn't really matter when he's giant.
So seeing Bryan have to spend Defile and Firebolt on that creature to remove it. Defile definitely looking a little awkward in Bryan's deck, as I mentioned last game, ending up on a lot of basics means a lot of mountains in his deck to not work with Defile. Shambling Ghoul continuing to poke away, but it definitely feels like Bryan is less so the person who needs to get in for chip damage and more so the engine deck, so failing to get anything much spinning early probably doesn't bode well.
We're kind of both floundering a bit here. Seem to be flooding out a bit on my side and maybe not getting enough lands on his side, so
Right, and this cube doesn't have, even though you're playing a +1/+1 counter stack, it doesn't have a ton of really expensive ways. Like very few hydras, if any, come to mind. The cube is designed to be pretty inexpensive all along the curve, topping out at the powerful 4-drops like Atsushi, Prosper, and Restoration Angel that we've already seen this match. Looks like 2 cards. Glasses on the table, probably not a good sign.
Yeah, Atsushi's getting busy. I think that was just a result of, like you said, this was at the end of a long day of Magic. So
True, we had already cubed twice, and each cube was going 4 rounds, so don't remember exactly which one this was, but it could have been as late as the 12th round of Magic that day, including 2 drafts. Birds of Paradise probably not the draw you're looking for. Even a land's not the worst draw for Bryan, as it would give him the 5 mana for Firebolt without having to use his treasure up.
I'm trying to figure out what that card in my hand is.
So this is Incinerate off of the Theorist.
Yeah.
Yes, Conspiracy Theorist, allowing him to cast that spell that he discards. And ultimately looks like just flooded out a little bit to lose that match. That ended up being the only one that Bryan was able to pick up, though, during that draft, as he ended up only 1-3 overall. You can see...
Same that I did, so...
Yeah, both decks very powerful when they got their thing going. Game 1 and Game 2 we saw that, but we saw Game 3 how both decks can kind of just piddle along if
Flounder.
they don't draw their key pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Atsushi? The dragon.
Yes.
Did some real work there for Bryan, so...
So back here with the 4th match, it was me against Jacob, and I was playing a flash deck with a little bit of blink in it. Scott, can you speak to what Jacob was playing?
Yeah, he had a blue-black ninjutsu strategy, so lots of cheap evasive creatures early and wanting to switch them out with some ninjas to get some random bits of value here and there.
Mm-hmm. Very thankful not to see a turn 1 creature from Jacob, as there's a lot of 1-mana flyers or 1-mana unblockable cards that are difficult to interact with. Though this one that threatens to come back from the graveyard, a card very good when most of the cube's lands are going to be non-basics here. I'm checking what exactly that number is. I believe it's 4 non-basics your opponent has to have in play before it gets very cheap to bring back. So, if possible, I'll want to play my lands to slow down on getting to 4 non-basics. You can see there I have a forest for the turn. And we have Mist Meadow Witch threatening to blink any of my good comes into play triggers, but looks like I'm content to just trade off for now, just keep my life total high. Playing the flash deck, definitely just hoping to get to the late game with as high of a life total as possible. Hurts that I didn't have anything to flash in at end of turn there, though. Though I think against ninjas, since they kind of have to attack hoping not to get blocked, having a bunch of flash creatures sets me up pretty well against them.
Yeah, and there's some really high value plays on 4 mana, whereas the 3 mana flash slot's a ton there.
So here, no blocks. Ninja of Deep Hours gets in. So a little bit of value and nothing to flash in at end of turn here. So my hand must have been very slow. But here we see On Thin Ice just halting Jacob's aggression.
Yeah, and this is why I don't like ninjas, because Jacob just went tempo negative to draw an additional card, and the other strategies are doing much more powerful things.
True. If he didn't end up with any of the removal to back it up, like this is the deck that wants a lot of the black removal that we've seen and to be splashing red or white to likely pick up a fair bit more. We see a white splash and a green splash from Jacob already, so not sure exactly what those are for, but definitely a little bit spooky, whatever he could have, or just looking to draw a card, continue to go up on resources thanks to Spectral Sailor.
Bloodbraid Elf, one of the few non-flash plays your deck has, but obviously a very powerful one.
Right, and putting into play Errant and Giada here, which is going to make all my future Flash plays a lot easier, allowing me to play, I believe, Flash and Flying spells from the top of my library.
Jacob opting to draw an additional card at the end of his turn with the Spectral Sailor.
Yes, a play that looked a lot better before I suddenly developed aggro. You probably wasn't expecting me to attack for 3 on that turn from an empty board. But he's got plenty of cards in hand. Do we know about one of them because of ninjutsu? So he takes Arrington Giada. I don't think that's of much value on his side, as there probably aren't a lot of flash creatures, and I end up getting it back right away, killing the... I forget the exact name of that card, but the... looks like it's Mind Singer, as it had taken Arrington Giada.
Yeah, but using your whole turn for that, I mean, you got in 3 more points, which is definitely strong. But it definitely feels like Jacob is trying to fight back, regain some of that tempo he lost earlier.
Yeah, having to pay nearly full price for Murderous Cut, but manages to slip in and generate a pair of, I believe that's Miss Syndicate. Yeah, Miss Syndicate Naga, as now I'm finding myself under a surprising amount of aggression. It looks like I have Unholy Heat here to slow it down. Of note, remember that count of non-basics I have is currently at 3, so still not super cheap for Razor Lash to come back. And Ethereal Forger here is kind of my powerhouse throughout this draft, as if it lives for a turn, just going up either of these removal spells would be great to fully take back the tempo of this game. But Jacob's still managing to spend all of his mana every turn. There we see Satoru come back down. But Ethereal Forger picking up Burst Lightning possibly means I'm looking to kicker it and kill Satoru here. though also reasonable to just want to get that one back to try to leave Unholy Heat for when I'm able to have Delirium after casting the Burst Lightning.
And you're also pressuring his life total pretty effectively with that Burst Lightning in hand, putting him at an effective 5 life.
True. I assume I have to aim something at the creatures here. Okay, so Kami's Flare to deal with the Spectral Sailor. Don't know what this discussion is. Maybe we're discussing if this is, but definitely after attacks before blocks.
Right. I assume it's a question of timing, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely not going to make the obvious mistake of no blocks. So, Satoru possibly getting picked up here again. So, making another copy of the Miss Syndicate Naga, which is going to make another copy. My apologies for having killed the original instead of the... Oh, and then ninjaing out Thousand Face for Infiltrator, which is going to draw him 2 cards off of this 5 damage. So we do a trade.
I also believe he missed a Satoru trigger there, right? Because it should trigger off ninjutsuing itself.
I believe so. One of his tokens should be gone, right? It traded with Bloodbraid.
Yeah, but the other one hit you and made another one. So it was just a net. Yeah.
Right. So it should just be untapped.
Yeah.
And we see Thousand Face come back down, just cast. A little surprising that wouldn't be looking to just ninja that turn, though after drawing 2 extra cards off of the damage makes sense that we're looking to wait. No attack, just looking to block with the Forger. Likely getting kind of hurt by only having 1 red mana, because if I had another red mana, the Unholy Heat in hand would be just as good as the Ethereal Forger for blocking. So going to blocks here means I can't cast a removal spell before damage, or else he can just ninjutsu. So I think maybe I've made a mistake here by not casting my spell before. Yeah, because here I can't try to Burst Lightning to kill the 3/1, because then he could ninja it out for Thousand Face, which can make a copy of the other attackers to be lethal. So that was a mistake on my end, not casting the Burst Lightning. I'm pretty sure I had a Burst Lightning still back.
Yeah, I don't think you ever cast the one from Forager.
Yeah, my mistake not casting it before making my blocks. Though I think either way, Fallen Shinobi getting in there threatens to probably leave me in a bad spot either way. Changeling Outcast threatening to allow any number of turn 2 ninjutsus. Jacob had all 3 of the ninjas that cost 2 and will draw him a card off of damage. So here, okay, no blocks and no ninja. Great to see, not just because it means I take less damage, but also those are 3 of the strongest cards in Jacob's deck, so him not having any of them on turn 2, great to see. Kami's Flare killing the Baleful Strike, so I was threatening to kill one if he ninjutsu'd it, so I guess there's a chance that he could have had one and just didn't want to get blown out. Kaleidos Scorch killing the Outcast, though, leaving Jacob with nothing in play yet. Spectral Sailor and Razor Lash coming back down. We saw last game Razor Lash never got online in a meaningful way before I ended up just losing, and it looks like I don't know what that card was. I hope it wasn't on Thin Ice, because I actually don't have a snow permanent.
No, it was Chained to the Rocks.
It was Chained to the Rocks. Okay, the other 1-mana enchant land, exile a guy.
Oh, Shinobi here, though.
Fallen Shinobi stealing Monas...
Is that how you wanted
Monster.
that turn to go? Is that
No.
ideal for...
No, it was not. I had to take a turn off to exile his creature that was going to deal me a lot of damage, and now the fact that I did that probably means I don't have another removal spell that can deal with either of these. Almost certainly not two. Okay. Yes, but taking another hit from Shinobi.
Yeah.
A, just giving him more of my cards, but B, like, it's a lot of damage. Already going to have me down to 9. And
Gaining him 5 life that turn as well.
yep, Resolute Reinforcements gonna fill out his board a little bit, which makes the ninjas even scarier, as even though it's just a 1/1 that I would normally feel fine letting through in other matchups, they're now very scary and must blocks, and I just have nothing that can really recoup fast enough. I would have needed a 1-mana spell and a land for Mentor to start to claw me back into that game, and even then it felt pretty hopeless.
Yeah,
So,
Fallen Shinobi can have that effect on games, but...
yes. I ended up winning all 3 of my other matches, though, to be 3-1 overall in that draft.
Yeah, and Jacob only managed to win 1 additional match, so he ended 2-2.
It was very surprising for me to hear after the whole thing was over, because Jacob's deck looked powerful, but looking at the list now, like, I can see I mentioned how that paying full price for that Murderous Cut was a little awkward, and he had just not enough removal to get his creatures through a lot of the time, is my best guess at what happened to him there.
So that will wrap up the Synergy Cube draft, the 3rd draft of the event. Just for a quick standings recap now, we have Bats in first with 9 wins, Matt in second with 8 wins, Joey and Scott with 7 wins, Derek with 6 wins, Jacob with 5 wins, Bryan with 4 wins, and Prose with 2 wins. Next up will be the Multiples Cube draft, the last draft before the seeded final bracket in the event, so keep an eye out for that coming soon. If you are interested in any more information about this draft or the league in general, feel free to check out the info panel for all of our social links and information. Thank you again for watching, and we hope to see you soon.